terrible day, that particular day. We'd already said at 9 o'clock in the morning, this is the sort of day that a fire could start just about anywhere.
I mean, the weather was horrendous already. The weather was so bad, and I think everybody knew it was potentially a bad day.
We noticed that it was quite smoky, but we all just assumed that it was from the fires up at Lithgow because it had been quite smoky all week.
The Lithgow State mine fire had started the day before and was rapidly spreading. And at 12:30, the Mount York fire ignited as well. Fire crews sent from all over the Blue Mountains had their hands full.
The day of the fire, I was on leave, so I was a school principal and I was in Canberra.
I had all the windows closed, the curtains closed, and I didn't even know there was a fire.
I was up at Hazelbrook working on a house my son had, a investment property.
Well, we were together, we were working in the city, and our son was home here and gave us a call about midday.
The people at work said, there's a fire at Linksview Avenue. I said, that's all right, it's a long way from us.
Far from the fires on the other side of the mountains, no one was expecting another bushfire to break out here in the Winmalee area.
Hi, Com, Hazelbrook 1, Blue.
Hazelbrook 1, then.
Hi, Com. We're currently looking back towards Winmalee and there's a column of smoke coming up from that area. Copy so far?
Copy so far.
Behind the Springwood golf course, a power line had come down near bushland and started a fire in Linksview Road. Fanned by hot winds, the fire was rapidly turning into a fast-moving blaze.
Our daughter Christy rang from the train station at Springwood to let us know there was a fire in the area, and she rang us again, I think, as she passed the fire site, and she said, "This is a serious fire, Dad."
Emergency services sent fire crews from every nearby station. The first truck arrived within 6 minutes of the call-out. Traffic on the main road through town quickly came to a standstill as people tried to get home or pick up their children from school.
Listen very carefully.
We didn't know anything about the fire until after lunchtime somebody phoned.
Our son was at preschool at Rainbow. My wife said, "Oh, should we go and get him?"
I was at the nursing home at Bucklands, a couple of kilometres away, booking my mum in. One of the nurses come running in and said to me, "Do you live in Buena Vista Road?" And I went, "Yeah," and they said, "You really need to go, there's a fire heading towards your place."
As soon as we got in the car and realised by monitoring the ABC and Facebook, there was really something quite different happening.
Ron and Susan were racing back to the mountains, trying to stay in touch with their son Harry, who was alone in the house.
Just the anxiety was extraordinary, trying to get there fast and visualise and have some real input into him. And it was silly, of course, because we were prepared if I was here, but I wasn't, he was. He didn't know how to turn the sprinkler system on. It was a system that would have covered the whole house in an envelope of water.
Hawkesbury Road was blocked, so I went round the back way and I stopped at the top of the street.
But by the time I got to Hawkesbury Road, the police block was there and I couldn't get any further.
I just pulled over onto a gutter, locked the car, left the car there.
It sort of felt really strange. You could hear explosions going off and smell the smoke and just waiting, basically.
And I could see people that I knew and they were offering me a lift, and I said, "No, I've got to get home because I'm not sure if Josh and his carer had gotten out." So I just said to the policeman, I'm sorry, I've got a young son that's Down syndrome, I'm going down, and he goes, go, you know, and ran all the way. It was about, I think, 3 kilometres, I'm not sure how far.
I ran over to the school and the teachers were at the hall, at the door, and all the kids were in the dark hall, and it was so hot, and there was kids crying and parents crying, and the teachers were doing an amazing job trying to keep the kids calm and get kids out to the parents.
By then, no one had phone coverage or anything like that.
The absolute sheer panic of not being able to contact Jim was worse than anything.
When I arrived here at Rainbow, I went for a walk around the house, the preschool, to sort of see what was possibly going on. You could hear in the distance, you know, cracking and popping, which, as a firefighter, you know that that's the sound of buildings burning or, you know, things burning.
We got them all together. They were watching Play School, which they normally do. The curtains were closed.
Our son called again and said, it's kind of big, it feels like something's happening. We just said to him, OK, get the cat ready, get the cat inside and ready in case you have to go. Put some things in your car, get your favourite bass guitar, get my laptop, get your laptop, and just get out.
I heard the back door open and I said, Mum, don't go out there. She said, oh, but there's fire on the grass. The fire came from the back, but it didn't burn all the gully like the regular fires did. It jumped. So I went out and, got the hose and hosed what I could, and then I looked up and Alan's workshop was on fire and my fernery was on fire, and I thought, I think it's time to make tracks.
As Jocelyn was fleeing the fire, her neighbour Fran was still trying to get home to her son Josh and dog Milo.
We were running down Singles Ridge Road and it was terrible because embers were starting to light up on Singles Ridge Road in the grass. I just stood up the top of the street and there was gas bottles exploding. The wind was so strong, it was like so dark you couldn't see, and the embers it was like being in the middle of a tornado. That's the only way I can describe it to people. And in the end, one of the gentlemen that I was with said, Fran, we need to turn back, we need to go back.
Many people fled to the car park at the White Cross shopping centre.
It was just panic, and there was people just running around, flying into the car park trying to get their kids.
One woman said to me from this street, I got my passports and the kids' passports, but I didn't get the cats, and I haven't got any shoes on.
In nearby Springwood, an official evacuation centre was set up at the sports club.
Because it happened sort of late in the afternoon, a lot were coming home from work, so couldn't get home, so we'd come straight to the evacuation centre to try and find out what was happening. Many of them were there and didn't know whether they'd lost their homes or, what was happening, because the streets were closed off and they couldn't get back.
Dozens of fire crews had been sent to the Winmalee area. They were fighting hard to save houses and save lives. But it was such a big, fast fire. The fire front was now heading for Yellow Rock.
The wind was coming straight into our faces. We knew the fire was coming in this direction, and there's nothing between the fire and us to stop it at all. I got the dam pump going. I had 2 fire pumps here connected to different tanks around the house. This dam was about a quarter full at the time.
The only road out of Yellow Rock was already blocked with cars and fallen trees. Many residents were fleeing to the local lookout instead.
I was inside the house with my mom, who was 90, and we started seeing so many vehicles driving down past our house to the lookout, car after car after car, and we started talking about what our plan would be if things really did get out of hand here and we couldn't control the fire. We decided that Mom and I and the 4 dogs would get in the car and drive down here, down Yellow Rock Road to the lookout. And I was wondering if really we had done the right thing.
Some cardboard boxes, some garden waste, and some coloured scraps of paper.
The intention was to keep the kids inside the preschool. It's better to shelter in place in that instance, in my opinion, than to basically move the kids out of the space.
The electricity went off at that stage. Telephones had gone, so with no way of communicating with anyone other than a mobile phone if we could get a signal.
And then the wind and so forth had just started to kind of really swirl around. So the wind kind of felt like it was coming from a number of different directions. And then we started to kind of get some embers dropping in the backyard and starting to see the fire kind of come through the gully.
I was really worried when we actually arrived down at the lookout, and we were like 25 or 26, 27 cars, and we were all very concerned about had we done the right thing and was this really a safe place to be.
I guess the fire at this stage had burnt through the Yellow Rock community, so we knew things were critical, of course, but that's why these people had evacuated here. There was no way out, so this was the only place to come.
The houses on fire at Colville Road, Yellow Rock, and another at 8080 Illingsworth Street. Did you respond unit to that area? Over.
A fire truck came down with 4 firemen, and they got out and said, look, they didn't like the look of this whole situation with all of us down here. So we were all quite relieved about that. We thought, oh, thank goodness somebody who really can more accurately judge the situation is here to tell us what to do.
The firemen judged it would be safer for everyone to turn back and shelter indoors at the Pearsons' house.
Our daughter Christy and I were, we had a separate pump and hose going. She was operating the front. The fireys put another water pump into the pool and they were using it at the front of the house as well. And I was walking with the hose, the main pump, spraying the water onto the house.
Back in Winmalee, Josh and his carer finally managed to get through to Fran.
Alan actually rang me, that's Josh's carer, and said, look, the house is filling up with smoke. And I said, you need to get out, there's a fire. And Alan opened the door, and when he opened the door, the houses over the road were already on fire. There was smoke and embers flying everywhere, and Milo panicked and jumped out of the car.
Alan spent precious minutes finding the dog and getting her back into the car.
Josh and Alan got out onto Hawkesbury Road and Alan took him out to Whitecross Shopping Centre, so he kept him there.
My husband was down the backyard with a hose, with a dribble of water coming out, because everybody else had the same idea.
Within about half an hour, things had changed quite dramatically, and it wasn't until it got really close and the smoke started to come inside and the smoke detectors went off that everyone started to be a bit more aware of how serious it was.
295. 295? What number are we looking for? 353.
Dale's wife stopped an RFS personnel carrier and told them about the children still at the preschool.
The front door opened and a fellow from the RFS walked in and got a bit of a shock to see us all there. And I just looked at his name badge and said, boys and girls, this is Fireman Dale's friend, Captain Steve. He's going to take us for a ride in his truck. So they just walked out, hand in hand, up to the fire truck. 18 of us in a personnel carrier. I was the last one in, and I could see flame all round us. Backyard, both sides, and in front of us there was flames.
So we had 48 people inside the house. We also had 23 dogs inside the house, a cat, luckily in a cage, and another lady down the road had brought her diabetic horse in the horse float.
Embers everywhere. Yeah, there were spot fires appearing here and there.
Some people had, wet towels over their faces, and people had a lot of trouble, with their breathing as well, because there was so much smoke and we had all the doors and windows closed. And it was quite smoky, very scary, because we really couldn't see outside very well to know what was happening out there.
But I knew the house was full of 50-odd people. They were the real concern on the day, I suppose. Just the fear that they must have had, and a lot of them not knowing whether their homes were actually burnt or burning at that time.
The fire front came within 30 metres of Bob and Sue's house. With the help of the firefighters, they managed to save the house and all the people and animals inside. But others weren't so lucky.
I had some friends and a brother and sister who lived, in nearby streets. So I went to check on them. Power lines down all over the road, smoke and embers, I suppose, still flying around, and obviously lots of houses that were on fire.
It's time to go. Forget it, bro. It's time to leave.
People walking around in a bit of a daze, holding pets, standing in the middle of the road, really kind of not what to do is when it kind of hits you about how quick it had gone through, how ferocious it had been, and maybe how lucky we'd been that no one had been killed or seriously injured.
I know who lives there.
Just say the house.
Oh, that guy's new house. He's been building that for like 8 years.
Oh my goodness.
On the 17th of October 2013, 197 homes in the Winmalee area were lost, and hundreds of people were made homeless. But thanks to the courage and efforts of emergency services, many more houses were saved, and no lives were lost. Fire crews worked through the night to put the fire out. But it was a long and anxious wait for many residents to see if they still had their homes in the morning.
The day after the fires, I was stationed at the top of Singles Ridge Road, and my job for the day was to allow residents in and to stop everybody else from going down for risks of it being a crime scene. And I felt it was quite a private thing for the people who had lived down there or were living down there, that they could go back down to their properties.
We walked down the street, and the only thing that was in my mind as I looked at all these houses that I'd known for 25 years was This looks like Sarajevo. It reminds me of the photos I've seen from a bombed out Sarajevo.
We walked in and all inside was just completely covered with ash and everything was grey. You couldn't see the furniture or anything. So we sort of looked and it was quite eerie because out the back, things were still burning. At the time, it's funny, I wasn't grateful. When I sort of come down and I looked and thought, well, Diane's house is gone, Karen's house is gone, all the houses were gone. Why isn't my house gone? You know, I didn't want my house to be standing.
Across the road from Fran's, Alan and Jocelyn's house was one of 7 in a row that had been lost.
That was a workshop. I had a big workshop here with a panel saw and welders, and we used to build steel frame homes for Lysart many years ago. I was most disappointed to see my workshop go because there was $200,000 or $300,000 worth of tools there. All my apprenticeship stuff, and it was cruel.
Never forget it.
Buena Vista Road was one of the hardest hit. 50% of houses were destroyed.
We walked down the street and I took photos as we went down. Oh, it was just terrible. There was... I didn't think I'd be like this. It was really fluky. Some houses were fine, some houses gone, and it was a really strange feeling. So, will our house be there or not? And so we walked down to our house, and it was just gone.
The thing that the community keeps reminding itself of is that this was just property, you know? It was just property that went. Every person managed to get out, and I think we'd be telling a very different story if there'd been lives lost.
The community was very much formed like if I can describe it, as a bubble around the community who had lost their belongings in their homes. They delivered food, they delivered water. There was already people collecting clothes. There was people who were willing to come in and search for animals, to help clean up properties, and that people, even though they'd lost so much, were caring about everybody else.
The community also showed their gratitude to the RFS volunteers who had fought that terrible fire.
The evacuation centre was open for 10 days. In the beginning, it was very chaotic and we were providing psychological first aid, which basically just means listening to people and helping them find their own way.
The problem is, when your house burns down, you are in a fog for months. So I think making decisions immediately after a fire is a really difficult thing.
And there were still fires that were coming through the valley and that, so people were still getting evacuated from their homes. The recovery centre covered things like insurance, Centrelink services. There was birth, deaths and marriages for people that had lost documents.
Before it was really weird standing outside of the recovery centre. You know, most people give to the community all their lives, and then taking something, and you go, how does this work?
It was hard at first to take it. It was like in the back of your mind, well, you know, it's not me, I don't need this. But of course you did. And the local Baptist church had the Salvation Army were using that as well. So you could go and get soap and all sorts of things in there. And the first time was really difficult, walking around, oh, I'll just take a little bit of that, a little bit of that. And people saying, no, you've got to take more. No, just a little bit. Just going there, they just didn't say, OK, go in there, take what you want. You actually had to sit down for a bit and have a chat. Somebody really was saying, OK, yes, you can have your bar of soap, but are you OK?
So they preempted what we often needed and would just very gently and very respectfully, which I think was amazing, guided us through like a brush. I didn't have a brush. So the lady told me I also needed shampoo. And when I thought about it, I thought, well, yes, I did.
Yeah, the shock of losing the house is one thing. The initial shock is one thing. It's the reality of all the things that is inside the house that make it a home. All those little realities hit at separate times.
It was like living in a cemetery. And somebody asked me a question, you know, you must feel really lucky that your house didn't burn down. And I just turned around and I said, well, actually, no, I don't feel lucky. And I won't feel lucky until every one of my neighbours is back where they belong.
We had our emergency services trailer setting up 2 feeding stations, one in Buena Vista, so that people could have hot meals, hand washing and someone to talk to.
And they were here for 2-3 weeks, giving us breakfast, lunch and tea. And if it wasn't for them, you know, just having the chats with them and stuff like that, you know, because the fire continued, the threat wasn't gone for a good 2 weeks. So we were getting messages, which was really good. Facebook, it kept us up to date, and that's a big help. We didn't lose human life. We lost a lot of animals, you know, which I can't begin to tell you how many animals perished in our street, you know, and God knows what was in the bush.
Every time someone says there were no lives lost during the bushfires, there were actually thousands of lives lost. And for people who lost animals during the fires, it's they lost their home and they lost everything, but the worst thing was losing their animal.
And to have them die the way they did, and we weren't the only ones. There were a lot of people who lost their pets and who had to have pets destroyed because of injuries and things like that.
But there's also the loss of the wildlife. And I don't think you could place a number on the amount of wild animals or native animals to Australia that were lost during those fires.
At Rainbow Preschool, the building itself was spared, but the back garden and play area had been destroyed.
So you took a deep breath and thought, right, now we have to get the place open again, because we had 64 families affected by the fire. Facebook came in useful. We need help. We had a working bee on the Saturday morning and 46 people arrived.
Like many people, Rainbow Preschool received a lot of help from local businesses and people outside the community.
I had people I didn't know were clearing the backyard, and we had it cleared and ready for business again in 6 working days, which was remarkable.
And then each time we came back, you just saw more and more. First it was just a pile of rocks or, you know, stone, bricks, melted metal. Then bit by bit it got cleared and they became sort of bare building sites. And then over the months and years, you started to see almost hope.
Once those houses over the road got knocked down, I started feeling a little bit better in myself, and could look at the future. Wanted to put so much brightness out there, and it was really good because as the people were coming and checking on how their houses, they'd go, every time we come, we just get so much enjoyment because your house just says welcome. I used to feed about 80 lorikeets. Come on. Slowly, they're starting to come back, which is really lovely. I have 3 feeders. I have 2 out the front and 1 out the back, and, you know, they're starting to learn, oh, she's back and there's food.
Hello.
Inspired by the regrowth she saw, Mary Lou started documenting the bush and the community coming to life again.
I have learnt so much with this particular project and what the Australian bush can do. It's a fascinating process to actually watch these trees that have been burnt to black cinder, and then all of a sudden you'll see a little burst come through that black. The bark will break and you'll just see this little bit of burst of colour come out. It's beautiful.
So the house was at about this level here. Where this slope is, that was the front steps, straight into the house right there. So this was the front door. You have to be well enough insured for the new fire regulations and things. The roof cost $90,000, and the roof costs so much because it's got layers. It's plywood, insulation, etc., etc. Rock wool right around the thing, so no embers can get in.
The cost of complying with the new building regulations depends on whether the house is next to the bush in the flame zone or further back.
So the fire shutters, you can see on this side is flame zone. This side and the eastern side is flame zone. The front is bushfire attack level 40, which you just have to have the thick glass and the metal fly screens. But on the flame zone, it's all shutters and the thick glass, etc.
So about 20 metres from the bush, then on that particular side, you're talking flame zone. And then as you go back, it goes to bell 40 is the next measure, then bell 20 and so forth. There was a meeting in Springwood where the insurance companies were there. It was a public meeting about a week after the fire. And the head of the insurance council stood up and looked at this room full of people, all who had lost their houses, plus others who came as well, and said, each and every one of you were underinsured. And they knew and they said it, and we all looked at each other and went, what?
And so we ended up with these big cheques, but when you then talk to a builder about the cost of rebuilding, they just laugh at you and say, you haven't got a hope in hell of rebuilding for that amount of money because you're flame zone. We just assumed that what we were insured for would build us a different type of house, and we were wrong. We were completely wrong.
And of course, some people couldn't rebuild. They just couldn't bring themselves to come back, you know, and you can understand that as well. You know, it's very hard to come back to somewhere where you've lost everything.
Particularly those that had experienced the fire previous, you know, which was only 12 years before. Come on, baby.
We were lucky the house didn't burn down, but we lost lots of our gardens and all of our fencing. We live on acreage, so it was about 2.5 kilometres of fencing that we lost. So that was a big job later, but of course nothing compared to what a lot of people had to go through.
People said straight after the fires, are you going to rebuild? And we didn't even think about it. Yes, it had been our home for 43 years. Of course we were going to rebuild. I mean, our house really was insured. It was our contents that was underinsured.
And the tools weren't insured.
Oh, they weren't insured at all because nobody had insured them.
You can't insure the value of them anyway. You can get bitter and twisted about it, and you can live in the past and be cranky about this and everything else, but it doesn't settle you. You may as well look forward to what you want to do and how you build it. I think. But I got cranky as well at the same time.
Oh, yes, he was a very angry man for a little while.
Anybody in authority I would have a go at.
I mean, really, when you look at it, it's like a new estate on that side of the road. Yeah. So if they hadn't have saved this little house, all of those they reckon they would have lost. And so Milo's happy now because she used to greet all the kids coming home from school, and for about 2 years there were no kids. I've still got the sign out the front, you know, where it said, "Hurry home, neighbours, we miss you," you know, and that's going to stay there forever. Or on the nail there. I have to get a new nail put in it.
In the, weeks after the fires and all the way up till Christmas time, we had every single person who had been here sheltering in our house come back to thank us. And you know what most of the people were saying to us is that they wish they could talk to everybody else and see what had happened to them and how have they been getting along.
We're not religious, but the local church held lunches and functions and fundraising, and even people who didn't lose their homes, they organised dinners that went for almost 2 years. And they invite like street areas so we could catch up because we're all displaced.
And what happens after a disaster is you don't have time for events, you don't have time for friends, you don't have time for fun. It is only the disaster, it's only recovery. Yeah, so the Red Cross and the Salvation Army put on a Australia Day street party, and that was a lot of fun. That was in the January. We brought cricket sets and did street cricket, and we were trying to build some of that community and put some respite back into the community. And that was a really fun day. It was good.
Although the bushfire destroyed so much, it also brought the community closer together as they helped each other recover. Five years on, and the bush is coming back. And people are learning to live with the changes to their lives.
It's changed. I don't fear the bush. I love the bush. I would like it closer, but, that's just being silly. But I love the environment that we live in. It's calming, it's centering. Possums eating our plants, which is fine because they're back.
We moved back 2 years last Tuesday. And some days I feel comfortable and other days it's just a house. It's not mine.
Recovery can be a long process of coming to terms with loss.
One of our friends said it's like living in an exhibition home. Well, it is, and it did feel like that for the first little while. So, this nice big lounge room. Oh, look at that TV, you know, that's big.
Yes, we have a lovely new home. We've got a very comfortable lifestyle. And the things we've brought back now are lovely. But the things that we lost, if you pick up something from your childhood, it evokes a memory. Like I had what was left of my father. I had everything of Dad's. There's nothing left of my father, ever. Not even my sister has anything. So things like that, you know, there's not only is there nothing to pass on to the children, but I can't pick up Dad's old cigarette case and think, you know, 40 years later, it still smells like Dad.
You put those away? Thank you. I think there are still people that are struggling, and I think there are people that will never recover. And especially when it comes round to the anniversary, I don't know why, I just get so sad.
Their experience of the fire has also left residents much more prepared for another one.
If you know that there is a fire coming, decide whether you're going to go. And if you want to go, go before it gets bad. You know, you have to make the decision.
I suppose we're more diligent to the smells than we possibly were before, that you smell smoke and you think, you want to know where it is. We take our cats, because I couldn't go through the loss of animals again. I would never want to put anybody in danger of trying to fight something like that, ever. After having seen what it does, I'd go.
I'm leaving if there's a fire.
Yeah.
I don't think I could stand to be here.
The people that did get home with their garden hose did have a fair chance of saving their house.
We've had this argument over and over again. There was no water pressure when I left. But somebody kept saying, if I was home, I could have saved the house. I kept saying,
could have tried.
No, you couldn't. And the boys said to me, Mum, I'm glad he wasn't there.
I used to think I'm prepared. Now I know I will never be prepared. It's something I'm aiming to do. There's always things to do.
You know, there's only so many volunteers. You know, surely if you're going to live up here, then you have to be responsible for your house.
Those volunteers in RFS local brigades are a valuable source of information and advice.
But I'm saying, you say be prepared, have a plan.
That's right.
So what do I do?
As Donna said, talk to your family.
Yes, yes.
They should be part of your plan because you're not mobile and you've got pets.
So just a little bit of, I think, just having the discussion, okay, so people are prepared for what their course of action will be.
Visualising the neighbourhood regarding key locations and escape routes can be a big help with planning.
My house is about there.
Yeah.
Down in there.
Go out and you go to Springwood.
Okay, what if that road's blocked?
And introduce herself to the neighbours, you know, maybe get a phone number if she wants to. Next door neighbours, because people are really good out here in the mountains.
You have hoses ready.
Yeah,
Do they have a water tank or a swimming pool?
Yeah.
Does it have like somewhere that has all those questions? Yep. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So could I suggest that tomorrow might be a really, really good thing to do to fire that generator up, making sure that it works. Get a new battery.
When you go home today, just do one thing.
Yeah.
It might be mow the grass. It might be put the dog lead in your quick box.
Yeah.
You know, just do one
It's
thing.
a really good idea, the dog lead thing. Yeah,
It
I'll
is.
do that.
Though the house wasn't affected by the fire, Tracy and her husband are renovating and will be more prepared for the risk of bushfire where they live.
Because we are in flame zone, we have had some trees cut down. So we had a number of trees in very close proximity to the house. So all the timber has come off the front there. We've got shutters on the window downstairs, and the garden out the front, we've taken everything out of that, and that will be a succulent garden.
I'll be more prepared for it, I think, next time, and so will the yard. Having gravel in and around a house and not have mulch on the boundaries of the house.
We bought the biggest backpack that we could find in the brightest colour we could find, and we put in like a charger for the phone. Although we had a mobile phone, nobody had a charger. I needed medication, popped that in, spare set of contact lenses, a thing of Panadol for the teachers, a list of what we must put in the bag, laminated there, ready to go, enrolment forms with all the contact details in there, ready to go. Pop it in the backpack as you're going out the door. We're ready to evacuate now. Stick it on your back. That's it, and you still have your hands free.
One of my grandsons, who is an IT whiz, he's sorted so that my photos are all safe.
And we've learnt through the fires that I've put precautions in for Josh now. I've taught him what to do. I've also asked the neighbours if they can be vigilant for him. He knows he can go to any of the neighbours. Put all the gold ones away. Special mementos, keep them in a box. Okay. Any more gold? Oh, look at that one. That's for your swimming.
Yeah.
What's that one? Soccer?
Yeah.
I have certainly had a change of heart about what's important to me. I have got things like handwriting that's important to me. Recipes. So recipes are things that mark family occasions. They are the smell of home and important events, and it's the things that people miss. They miss the recipe that their grandma used to make that's written in a cookbook. That is what I've got in my safe space.
Ron and Susan will soon be moving into their new house and will be rejoining their street community fire unit.
If you're coming to the area, really would advise you to join either the CFU, the Community Fire Unit, which is run by the Fire Brigade, or the RFS. There are a number of reasons for that. It's another way of getting into the community, but more importantly, you learn the basics. You learn the reality. You live in this wonderful environment, and it is a fire-prone environment, and you start to understand, okay, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, or what do I do if something happens? It's just a sensible thing to do.
During the fire season, it's also smart to keep a close eye on fires in the area by watching the Fires Near Me app on the phone, or by following local Facebook pages and websites.
You know, if we are going to be living here, then we need to look after our family, look after each other.
Come here, Rosie. Are you going to taste this? I know how you go.
I hadn't fully comprehended how a disaster affects children, and I have seen how two children can be affected in two totally different ways. And it's not just on the day of the disaster, it's through the recovery and how they're going to recover from that experience.
I was fortunate enough to help out at Wimmera Public School, where they held the Pillowcase Project, which is a project to, you know, teach kids about being prepared and what emergencies are. They talked about what they would take and if they had to leave quickly. And I know that a lot did go home and talk to their parents about it and, you know, say, no, we need to prepare, we need to have a kit just in case anything happens.
Oh, over almost must be nearly 10 years now. Dale, because he's a dad, a preschool dad, offered his time to come in and talk to the children. And he was our special friend, Fireman Dale.
All right, so boys and girls, what happens if there's a fire? How do we know that there's a fire here at Rainbow?
I know. There's a smoke alarm.
There's a smoke alarm. Well done. Is there a smoke alarm here in Rainbow on the ceiling?
Yeah.
Yeah, do we know where they are?
Yes, what do we got? Monkey, look. Sit down. Sit. Good sitting. It's really important to plan for every member of the family, including all the animals, to have to have all the equipment ready. We leave this in the laundry. This is our go bag in case there is very little time to evacuate, so we just need to grab something. So we have some collars. Luggage tags are a great thing to have. We have spare leads and collars. We have some water bowls. If your dog has any special needs, my dog has an irritable bowel and pancreatitis. There was people in the survey that we did who said they wasted 10 minutes trying to find the crate for the cat.
I've grown up living in the area where there's that risk, and it needs to be recognised and used to help us prepare, from year to year, and build on what we've done in the previous season to prepare better for the next season.
I don't think people are now sitting back saying, oh, it's okay, it'll never happen to me, which is something we're all guilty of because we now know it can happen to me.
And I think it's important that everyone takes a lot more responsibility for their own safety and welfare all year round, because, there's not going to be a fire truck for every house, and we're told that all the time. But I don't think people really appreciate how stretched resources can be when those fast-moving fires happen, which are going to become a lot more common.
We know how critical it is to have water in this sort of area with bushfires. As often as we get them, we know we need water.
We haven't had decent rain since March last year. In 20 years, we've never experienced that. And it doesn't mean, you have to wait 10 or 12 years for a bushfire to strike. We could have another one anytime. Come on.
We've probably been a bit sceptical about, the climate change factors, but after experiencing this,
we know
we
it's real.
We feel there is certainly something
so many changes
that has to be done about it.
So my first experience of a fire was when I was 3. So and I've been through every other fire in this area since. I'm much more prepared, I think, to lose it than I was before. I think when we first built this house, because we owner built it and we were just married and we had like 2 beans to rub together and that was it. I think we valued this very highly. But now I realise I don't value it like I did. There's other things I value more. Yeah.
We don't want to go through it again.
No, but we feel that we're safer now than we were before those fires, and we're safer in those fires than we were in the fires before. So every time we learn something. And I think that's a good thing, a very good thing, if you can learn from the experiences that you've had and try to make it better for you for the next time. Because we all know, we live in the Blue Mountains, there is going to be a next time. That's for sure.
Hey, girls. Hello. How are you, darling? Look at the table, sweetheart.
Hello. G'day, how's it going? Yeah, not bad.
We watch one another rebuild, pick up our lives, whinge, complain. Hey, Josh! But it's so nice to walk up to the letterbox and see Carol or Jocelyn or Fran, and just knowing they're there.
That colour, twin set. Then I thought, well, it's Nellie. Thank you.
Nowhere else was going to be home, because these people were all part of what had become home. You find something nice on the table for me. I'm just glad they're here. I'm really glad they're here.
Okay. Righto. 1, 2,